Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Michelle, and today I am going to be sharing my thoughts on The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn by Mark Twain. Before we get into this video, if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe, hit that notification bell, and that like button. And I would also like to mention that I am in no way qualified to be reviewing any of these books. These are all classic literature books, and they're classics for a reason. And I would also like to talk a little bit about Mark Twain. Mark Twain was an author, an American author, a 19th century American author, and he was famous for, mostly famous for two of his books, the one that I am sharing my thoughts on today, The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, and also The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. And another interesting fact about this book is that it actually didn't win any awards, but that's because around the time that it was published, they weren't really giving many awards out for literature. And one more interesting fact about this book is that when it was first published, it was actually banned in Massachusetts, so that people who reviewed these books were not allowed to recommend them, and it was banned because of the language, and there was a lot of controversy around this book because of the kind of language that Mark Twain decided to use, intentionally used in the book, and that is actually the reason why it became famous, because of all this controversy. And so there you go, now you know a little bit about Mark Twain and the backstory behind this book, and some stuff that happened after it was published. So now let's start talking about The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. And also the reason why it's called The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn is because it really does talk about the adventures of Huckleberry Finn and what he goes through throughout this book. What this book is about is Huckleberry Finn. It's actually told from his point of view, as if he's writing the story and talking to you while he's writing the story. I'm not sure if I explained that well, but he's a young boy who has an abusive father. His father's also an alcoholic. He's addicted to alcohol. And one thing that Huck really likes to do, and by the way, he decides to go by Huck, he really likes to go to school to kind of escape this atmosphere in his house, and his father actually beats him for it. He doesn't want him to go to school at all, and he goes so far to get Huck to not go to school that he literally locks him up in a cabin that's right next to a river, and locks him in this cabin and stays out of the house and goes out and buys some drinks. And poor Huck, he can't go to school, he can't do anything, and he's really done with this life that he's been living with his father, and so he decides to do something crazy. He decides to stage his own murder and to run away. And how is he going to do this? Well, first of all, he's going to set up a crime scene and everything, make it look like somebody came in, tried to rob them, and killed Huck. And Huck's plan to get away from this cabin and not be seen is to steal a canoe. So he saw an abandoned canoe floating around on the river, and so he decides to take that canoe, and he keeps it near the cabin so that when it's time for him to run, he's gonna go. And so he sets up this murder scene, and then he takes this canoe, and he's on the water, just trying to get as far away as possible from his home, from the cabin. And his father is obviously looking for him. He can actually tell because he ends up near an island, and he sees his father and his father's lawyer and some other people boarding this ferry. And once the ferry leaves, Huck knows that they are not going to return, and so Huck decides that he might be able to find some wood on this island and create a place for him to stay in, and the island will probably have resources for him as well so that he can survive. But when he goes on this island and he's venturing through the woods, he meets someone. He meets a familiar face. He used to live with Miss Watson for a year. When his father took off and disappeared for 1 year, he used to live with her, and she had a slave, and this slave's name was Jim. And so he actually finds Jim when he's in the woods, and he's like, Jim, what are you doing here? And Jim is horrified at first, and he thinks that what he's heard is that Huck is dead. And so Jim thinks that this is like a ghost, and he's terrified. And so Huck has to explain to him what's going on and how he escaped. And in turn, Jim tells him why he's on the run. So Jim overheard from Miss Watson that she was going to sell him to a slave trader from the New Orleans, and he was absolutely terrified, so he made a run for it. And so Huck and Jim stick together and try and find resources to create a little home for them. And so they do that. And one day Huck is, venturing through the woods again looking for food, and he actually finds a rattlesnake. And he decides that it would be a bright idea to kill this rattlesnake and put it in Jim's bed as a joke. And he thought it would be a really funny prank. However, when Jim goes to lie in his bed, he finds that he not only finds this dead rattlesnake, but he finds this rattlesnake's friend, and it bites him, and it takes him a few days to recover. During these days, while Jim is recovering, Huck decides to dress up as a girl and to go see if anybody else has any news, and he checks on one of their neighbors, and she tells him the news that Huck is dead and that he was murdered. And not only that, but Jim is actually, everyone is accusing Jim of having murdered Huck because he happened to disappear just on the same exact day that Huck was presumed to be murdered. And that is the news, and so Huck knows now that they have to run, that they cannot be found at all. And so the rest of this book continues on to talk about the adventures of Huckleberry Finn. So make sure you check out this book if you haven't already. And I really did like this book. It was not only funny, but it was also really entertaining just to see where Huck would go with these adventures, and how he would protect Jim, and not only Jim but also himself, and how he would survive. So if you guys enjoyed this, enjoyed hearing about what this book is about, make sure you check out the description box below, where I will leave the links for Amazon, Google Books, Barnes & Nobles. If you click on the link for Google Books on the bottom right corner of your screen, it should show the nearest libraries that this book is available at. And as you guys know, in every single one of these videos, I have a sneak peek where I show you guys the cover of the next book that I'm going to be reviewing. And here it is. It is called The Great Gatsby, and it is by F. Scott Fitzgerald. If you guys want to check out this book review, then make sure you check out my page. I really do hope you guys are enjoying this series as much as I am, and I will see you guys next Sunday with a new video. Bye guys!